My parents were livid when my sister wound up pregnant. They totally lost control and kicked her out of the house. I took her in, let her live with me, and vowed I'd raise the baby as my own. Years later, my parents turned up unannounced and fell silent when they recognized the shocking truth about that child. They just stared at us, stunned, trying to grasp what they were seeing. I still remember the day my world imploded. It wasn't some accident, or a twist of fate. It was a betrayal so profound, so gut-wrenching, it ripped my family apart. And I was left to pick up the pieces, facing judgment, poverty, and loneliness, all for a promise I'd made to someone I loved more than life itself. What would you have done in my shoes? You know, life in Hood River, Oregon, used to be pretty simple for me, Alex. I'm a software engineer, 33, living in one of those beautiful, quaint towns where everyone pretty much knows everyone's business. My days were a routine: code, meetings, social media. I thought I was content. I thought that was enough. But then, everything changed. My family, the Petersons, we were practically town royalty. My dad, Robert, an accountant with a voice like bedrock. My mom, Susan, a high school literature teacher who preached Shakespeare by day and strict family honor by night. We were the perfect family. But their love wasn't about hugs or I love yous. It was punctual dinners, homework reminders, and one ironclad rule: never bring shame to the Peterson name. As the eldest, I lived under the suffocating weight of those unspoken expectations. Straight A's. Football. An engineering degree. I did it all to make them proud. But the one who truly owned my heart wasn't them. It was my little sister, Clara. Clara was 5 years younger. A gentle breeze, she was, with big round eyes and golden blonde hair. I remember the day Mom brought her home. So tiny. That rare, soft smile on my parents' faces, a smile I barely saw again. Clara was my constant. She knew how to make me laugh, even after Dad's harshest scoldings. I taught her to ride a bike, how to make kites, how to hide from Mom's anger. We were a team. Always. But our perfect facade had cracks. When I was 15, I started hearing them. Hushed, knife-sharp arguments. Mom talking about leaving. Dad about honor, about us. I saw Mom crying silently in the kitchen, overheard her telling a friend she stayed for the children. It made me feel both grateful and impossibly guilty. Clara, thankfully, was too young to fully understand, but she felt the tension. Alex, why doesn't Mom smile anymore? She'd ask, clutching her doll. I'd just pat her head, lying. Mom's just tired. Inside, I wished I could take us somewhere everyone smiled. We had our own world, though. Sneaking cookies. Playing hooky from chores. Once, Clara lost a silver bracelet, terrified of Mom's anger. I found it under the sofa. "You're my superhero," she said. I laughed, but a part of me thought, if only I could be a superhero for all of us. When I went to college, Clara was 13, blooming into a young woman. She wanted to be a nurse, to help people. I was so proud. But I knew our parents. They wanted law. Or business. Something with a future. After college, I moved back to Hood River. My job was stable, decent. I loved being near Clara, hearing her dreams. Dinners at Mom and Dad's were always stiff, formal. Dad talked work. Mom grilled me on future plans. Clara was usually quiet, but her eyes would always find mine, as if to say, "You get it, right?" Everything seemed fine until one day, Clara, then 22 and in her final year of nursing school, sent me a text. Short. But it made my heart pound. Alex, I need to see you. Don't tell Mom and Dad. I knew instantly. Something was terribly wrong. I called. No answer. Then another text, asterisk tonight. The coffee shop on Maple Street, asterisk that evening, I sat there, my latte long cold, the dim streetlights reflecting off the wet pavement. Don't tell Mom and Dad. The words echoed in my head, a chilling mantra. Then the door jingled, and Clara walked in. She wore an oversized coat, her blonde hair piled high, but her eyes were red-rimmed. She sat across from me, hands clasped tight, avoiding my gaze. I wanted to shout, to demand answers, but I knew Clara needed time. Clara, I said, my voice calmer than I felt. Are you okay? What's going on? She bit her lip, holding back tears. Then she looked up, her voice a trembling whisper. Alex. I'm pregnant. My world stopped. I stared. Searching for a joke. Just kidding. But her eyes, they were brimming. It was true. My throat tightened. I just sat there, gripping my cup. How far along? I finally choked out, my voice strained. Clara, my little sister, the cookie thief, was going to be a mother. She looked down. 5 months, she said, so soft I had to lean in. I don't know what to do, Alex. I'm scared. 5 months, Clara, why did you keep it a secret so long? Why didn't you tell me? She burst into tears, covering her face. I was too scared. I thought I could handle it. But then. Mark, Her shoulders shook. Mark Davies. I remembered him. Tall, blonde, confident. A finance major who talked big plans. Something about his eyes always bothered me. What about Mark? Does he know? Clara nodded slowly. I told him 2 months ago. At first, he said he'd stay. Then he disappeared. No calls. No texts. I heard he moved to Seattle for a startup. He left me. He doesn't want the baby. A surge of pure rage, hot and sickening, flooded me. Mark. That arrogant jerk. He had abandoned my gentle sister. I wanted to find him. Punch him. But seeing Clara so fragile, so broken, I knew anger wouldn't help. Okay, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though my hands trembled. We'll figure this out. You're not alone. I'm here. I reached across, taking her ice-cold hand. She squeezed back, a lifeline. Alex, I don't want to have an abortion, Clara said, her voice firmer now. I know what people will think, what Mom and Dad will think, but I can't. This is my baby. I nodded, my mind a tangled mess. I didn't know how to help her, but I knew I couldn't let her face it alone. Then we'll keep the baby, I said, as if it was obvious. But Clara, you have to tell Mom and Dad. They need to know. Her eyes widened with panic. No. You don't understand. They'll kill me. They'll never forgive me. You know how they are. God, I knew. Our parents. Their ironclad rules. Their obsession with honor. A daughter, 22, pregnant out of wedlock in Hood River. It wasn't just a scandal. It was an indelible stain. But her belly would betray her soon. Clara, I said, my voice low. We can't hide this forever. It's better they hear it from you. I'll be there, okay? I won't let you face them alone. You promise? She whispered, searching my eyes for hope. I promise, I replied, my own fear as big as hers. I pictured Dad's cold, sharp eyes. Mom's whispers that cut deeper than any shout. But I wouldn't let Clara face them alone. Never. 2 days later, I drove Clara to our parents' house. That white 2-story with a neat garden, the Peterson family sign by the door. It felt like a fortress. They were in the living room. "Alex, Clara, what's this about?" Mom asked, suspicion lacing her soft voice. Clara clutched my arm. "Mom." "Dad," I began, my voice shakier than I wanted. "It's about Clara." Dad slowly folded his newspaper, eyes narrowing. "What is it?" he asked, his voice like stone. Clara took a deep breath, her voice trembling but clear. "I'm pregnant. 5 months along." Silence. A heavy, sharp silence that sucked the air from the room. Mom froze, her hand gripping a cleaning cloth, knuckles white. Dad sat up straight, his eyes shifting from surprise to blinding rage. "What?" he roared. "I'm sorry," Clara sobbed. "I didn't mean for this to happen, but I want to keep the baby." Mom stepped forward, her face hardened, her eyes like knives. "Clara, do you realize what you've done? You've destroyed this family's honor. What will the neighbors say? How will we hold our heads up?" Dad cut in, his voice slightly gentler, but no less commanding. "Clara, you need to fix this. Get an abortion. Now." Clara shook her head, tears streaming. "No. I won't. I can't." "Can't?" Dad thundered, standing abruptly. "You don't get to choose. You've disgraced this family, and now you dare talk back." I couldn't stay silent. I stepped in front of Clara, trying to shield her. "Clara hasn't done anything wrong. She's trying to do the right thing. Can't you see that?" Mom looked at me, her eyes full of disappointment. "Alex, you're defending her. Do you know what this will do to us? She needs to fix this, or we won't be the Peterson family anymore." "The Peterson family?" I scoffed, my heart aching. "Family means standing by each other, not keeping up appearances. Clara needs us, and you're turning your backs on her." Dad pointed at me, his face red. "Don't lecture me about family, Alex. If she wants to keep that thing, she's no longer my daughter. Get out of this house. Now." Clara sobbed, clinging to me. My heart felt crushed, but I wouldn't let her break. "Fine," I said, putting my hand on Clara's shoulder, guiding her to the door. "If you're kicking Clara out, you're kicking me out too. We'll manage on our own." The door slammed behind us, a final, deafening judgment. Clara wept in the car. I drove, fighting my own tears. I didn't know what we'd do, but I knew this: Clara and her baby were my family, and I'd do anything to protect them. The weeks that followed were a nightmare. My small apartment, meant for one, was now home to 2, soon to be 3. I gave Clara the bedroom and slept on the sofa, switching to remote work, taking on freelance projects just to cover expenses. Clara barely left her room, eyes vacant, cradling her belly. I tried making her laugh, recounting old stories, but she'd only manage a faint, burdened smile. Mrs. Davis, our downstairs neighbor, started asking probing questions. Hood River secrets don't stay secret long. I devoured books on newborn care. Learning to mix formula, change diapers, hold a baby. Every evening, I'd tell Clara what I learned, trying to convince her we could do this. But sometimes, after she slept, I'd sit alone on the balcony, staring at the Columbia River, feeling like I was drowning. I wasn't just a brother anymore. I was a protector. A caregiver. And I wasn't sure I was strong enough. Months blurred into a marathon of sleepless nights and endless coding. I'd work until my eyes stung, juggling projects to cover rent, medical bills, baby things. Clara noticed. One night, she brought me tea. "Alex, you don't have to do everything," she said, worried. "I can find a part-time job." "No," I cut her off, perhaps too harshly. "You need to rest. Let me handle it. She nodded, but I saw the guilt in her eyes. I hated that she felt like a burden. I just couldn't make her understand that she and the baby were my reason for going on. The town's whispers stung. That's the brother of the girl who's pregnant out of wedlock, someone muttered at the grocery store. Each word was a small knife. I didn't care what they thought of me, but when Clara, her pregnant belly visible, was met with averted eyes, I wanted to scream. I just clenched my fist and held her hand tighter. Clara started staying home, windows shut. I don't want them to look at me like that, she'd say. I don't want them to think I'm a mistake. I'd hug her, telling her she wasn't, that she was the strongest person I knew. But my words felt hollow against the pain in her eyes. Not everyone turned away, though. Mrs. Davis started bringing homemade food. Pumpkin soup. Cookies. The girl needs to eat properly, she'd wink. Clara smiled. A real smile. And a flicker of hope ignited. Maybe the whole world wasn't against us. When Clara reached her 8th month, everything became intensely real. We went to checkups. The baby was fine, but Clara needed rest. I massaged her feet, cooked for her, bought extra pillows. But her anxiety grew. Alex, what if I can't do it? What if I'm not a good mother? She asked one night. You'll be a wonderful mother, I said, taking her hand. You already love this baby. That's what matters most. I was scared, too, but I couldn't show it. The day Clara went into labor was a rainy October morning. I heard her call from the bedroom, panicked. Alex, I think it's time. My laptop nearly crashed. I rushed in. Her face was pale. It hurts, she whispered. The drive to the hospital was a blur. I gripped the wheel, trying to stay calm while she breathed heavily, squeezing my hand. I'm here, I repeated like a mantra. Nurses whisked her away. I sat in the hallway, hours stretching into an eternity. My parents hadn't called once. A few days after they kicked Clara out, I'd called Mom, hoping. She'd said, when Clara fixes her mistake, she can come back. I'd hung up without another word. Now, with Clara in labor, I wanted to shout at them. To tell them they were missing the most miraculous moment of their lives. But I didn't. I just prayed. After 3 agonizing hours, a nurse emerged, smiling. She's given birth. A healthy baby boy. My legs shook so much I nearly fell. Can I go in? I whispered, my voice breaking. The nurse led me to the room. Clara, drenched in sweat, was radiant. Next to her, a tiny bundle, eyes closed tight. Leo, Clara whispered, looking at me. I named him Leo. I stepped closer, unsure. The nurse gently placed him in my arms. He was so small. So warm. And as I looked down, the whole world narrowed to just us. Me, Clara, and Leo. I cut the umbilical cord, my hands trembling. When the nurse showed me how to hold him, I felt like I'd become part of something bigger than myself. The weeks that followed were a new challenge. Clara was weak. I became the primary caregiver for both her and Leo. Diapers. Formula. Soothing cries in the middle of the night. Some nights I got 2 hours of sleep, juggling work and baby duty so Clara could rest. I was exhausted, but every time I saw Leo sleeping, his tiny fists clenched, I knew it was all worth it. Clara slowly recovered, starting online nursing classes. I want to do this for Leo, she said. I want him to be proud of his mom. Seeing her quiet resilience, I felt both proud and heartbroken. She was trying so hard despite the judgment, the cold silence from our parents, the scars Mark left. I wanted to tell her she was already an incredible mother, but I just smiled, patted her shoulder, and went back to my work, trying to keep everything from falling apart. Time flew. Leo was now 3, a tiny boy with Clara's golden hair and big, curious brown eyes. He was the center of our lives. Every morning, I'd make his bottle, play with him while Clara studied. Those giggles, his tiny hand clutching my finger, were medicine. Then it happened. Leo called me Daddy. I nearly dropped my coffee mug. Clara laughed, but her eyes held a trace of sadness. He loves you, she said. But you're not. She didn't finish, but I understood. I wasn't Leo's father, even though I'd done everything a father would. Our life, though hard, had stabilized. Mrs. Davis became an unexpected ally, bringing toys and cookies. Those small words of encouragement kept me going. But deep down, a void remained. Our parents hadn't reached out. I'd tried once with a 1-year-old Leo, hoping the sight of his grandson would soften Dad. He just stood at the gate, cold. Get out of my sight. He's not a Peterson. I'd driven away, fighting tears. Then one evening, everything changed. I was on the sofa, checking emails. My phone buzzed. A name hit me like a punch. Mark. 3 years. 3 years since he abandoned Clara. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I wanted to delete it. But curiosity, or maybe anger, made me click. Alex, the email began. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to talk to Clara. I want to see her and my son. I was wrong, and I want to make it right. Please give me a chance. Blood rushed to my head. A chance, after what he did? I paced, suppressing my rage. Clara came out, wiping her hands, worried. Alex, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I hesitated, but Clara wasn't a child anymore. She deserved the truth. Mark sent an email, I said, my voice dry. He wants to see you and Leo. Clara froze, her face paling. She sat down, trembling. What did he say? She whispered. I handed her the phone. She scanned it, lips pressed tight, eyes glistening. He has no right, she said, but her voice wavered. Exactly. I snapped, my tone harsher than I meant. He abandoned you, Clara. He doesn't deserve to be Leo's father. You don't have to see him. But I caught a flicker of hesitation in her eyes. She looked out the window. But maybe Leo needs to know who his father is, she said. Her words felt like a slap. I'd been here for 3 years. Changing diapers. Staying up nights. Everything. But I wasn't Leo's father. And though I hated to admit it, her words stung. Are you sure? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He hurt you, Clara. Who's to say he won't do it again? She shook her head, tears streaming. I don't know, but I have to think about Leo. If Mark is truly sorry, maybe he deserves a chance. A few days later, I reluctantly agreed to let Clara respond to Mark. I didn't want to, but I couldn't force her. She wrote a short, polite, but cold message agreeing to meet in Portland. I insisted on going. I didn't trust him. Clara agreed, but I saw the uncertainty in her eyes, caught between worlds. On the day, I drove her to Portland, leaving Leo with Mrs. Davis. Clara was silent, hands clasped tightly. When we arrived, Mark was already there. In an expensive suit, a far cry from the arrogant college kid. He stood, a nervous smile on his lips. Clara, he said, his voice soft but tense. Thank you for coming. He nodded at me, but I didn't respond, just sat, arms crossed, staring. Mark began talking, his voice shaky. He'd moved to Seattle. Worked for a tech startup that became wildly successful. He was a millionaire now. Penthouse. Employees. But none of it made me happy, he said. I was wrong, Clara, he bowed his head. I was scared. I wasn't man enough to be a father. But I've changed. I want to meet my son. I want to make things right. Clara sat silently, clutching her coffee cup. I wanted to interrupt, to yell that he didn't deserve this, that he had no idea what we'd been through, but I stayed quiet, letting Clara decide. Finally, she looked up, her voice cold but firm. Mark, you left me when I needed you most. You think an apology is enough? Mark knelt right there in the coffee shop, drawing stares. I don't expect you to forgive me right away, but I want to prove myself. I want to meet Leo. To be part of his life. And I want to make up for what I did to both of you. He looked at me, seeking approval. My blood boiled. Make up for it? I snapped. You think money can buy back the 3 years Clara endured? The 3 years I watched her cry because of you. Alex, Clara said, placing a hand on my arm, her voice soft but firm. Let me handle this. I clenched my jaw and looked away. Mark kept talking, promising to provide for Leo. To secure his future. He'd even hired a lawyer for a trust fund. Clara listened, torn. She wasn't the naive girl who loved Mark, but she was a mother, and I knew she was thinking about Leo. In the weeks that followed, Clara met Mark a few more times. Always in Portland. Always with me. He was patient, bringing gifts for Leo. But Leo clung to me, calling me Daddy, and it broke my heart. Mark tried to connect, but Leo was too young. Once, when Mark tried to hold him, Leo cried and ran to me. I saw Mark's eyes darken, but he said nothing. Clara was wavering. Alex, I don't know what to do, she said one night. Mark says he wants to be a father. He has money. He can give Leo a better life. But I don't know if I can trust him. And I don't want to lose you. You won't lose me, I said, taking her hand. But you have to decide what's best for Leo. Not for Mark. Not for me. But for your son. She nodded, conflict in her eyes. I was conflicted, too. I'd spent 3 years being Leo's father. Now Mark was back with money and promises. I was afraid of losing Leo. Of losing Clara. But I couldn't be selfish. I had to think of them. Every time I saw Leo running around, grabbing my hand, calling me Daddy, my heart tightened. I knew Clara was considering Mark's offer. And though I hated to admit it, I understood. Mark brought a future I couldn't provide. Security. Freedom from worry. I could hate him, but I couldn't deny he could give Leo things I never could. One afternoon, I came home. Clara called me into the living room. She sat on the sofa, Leo dozing on her lap. Mark stood in the corner, tense but determined. Alex, Clara began, her voice soft but firm. Mark has something to say to both of us. I sat down, arms crossed, trying to stay calm. Mark cleared his throat, stepped forward, and placed a stack of documents on the table. Alex, Clara, he said, his voice steady. I know I can't undo the damage I've caused, but I want to start. I've bought a house in Hood River, right by the Columbia River. It's worth $1 million. I want to give it to the 3 of you, Clara, Leo, and you, Alex. It's a place where Leo can grow up, where Clara can study, and where you, Alex, won't have to worry about rent anymore. I was stunned. Speechless. $1 million house. I looked at Clara, equally shocked. Mark, are you serious? She asked, trembling. He nodded, pulling keys from his pocket. I've signed the papers. The house is yours. I just want to do the right thing. I wanted to refuse. To say we didn't need his money, that we'd managed fine without him. But I looked at Clara. At Leo sleeping peacefully on her lap. And I knew I couldn't let pride stand in the way of their future. Thank you, I said, my voice dry. But this doesn't change what you did. Mark nodded, as if expecting it. I know. But there's one more thing. He turned to Clara, his eyes softening. Clara, I want us to start over. If you'll have me, I want to marry you. A proper wedding. To give you respectability, to give Leo a complete family. I promise to spend my life making it up to you. Clara sat silently, stroking Leo's hair. I saw her struggling, torn between the pain of the past and hope for the future. I wanted to shout, to tell her Mark couldn't be trusted. But I said nothing. This was Clara's life. Leo's life. I couldn't decide for her. After many nights of reflection, Clara called me out to the balcony where we often sat, watching the Columbia River. Alex, she said, her voice soft but resolute. I've made my decision. I'm going to forgive Mark. Not because I still love him, but because of Leo. He deserves a family. A future. Mark can give Leo things you and I can't. I nodded, though my heart felt like it was being crushed. Are you sure? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He hurt you once. How do you know he won't do it again? I don't, Clara admitted, her eyes glistening. But I have to try for Leo. And you'll always be the most important person to me and my son. No one can replace you. I hugged Clara, hiding my tears. She was right. Leo needed a family. A father. Even if that father wasn't me. But knowing that didn't ease the pain. I had spent 3 years being Leo's daddy. Now I had to learn to let go. Clara and Mark's wedding was at a luxurious hotel in Portland, adorned with white flowers. Clara, in her white dress, her golden hair intricately braided, looked like a princess. Leo, in a tiny suit, giggled, and I scooped him up. I was the best man, standing beside Clara, smiling while my heart shattered. Mark, in his tuxedo, looked like a transformed man, but I still couldn't fully trust him. I scanned the reception hall, hoping, even in the back row, to see my parents. But they didn't come. I'd sent an invitation with a short letter, telling them Clara was starting fresh, that they could meet their grandson. No response. I guess they still clung to their pride. Whatever the reason, their absence hurt more than I expected. After the wedding, Clara, Mark, and Leo moved to Seattle, to Mark's penthouse overlooking Puget Sound. I helped them pack, trying not to let Leo see my sadness. When he hugged me and said, "Daddy, I'll see you soon, right?" I just nodded, afraid my voice would break. I moved into the new house Mark gave us. A spacious 2-story home by the Columbia River, a garden, large windows facing the green hills. It was beautiful. More beautiful than anywhere I'd lived. But it felt empty. No more Leo's laughter. No more late-night talks with Clara on the sofa. I kept working. Kept coding. But every evening, alone in that large living room, a part of me felt missing. A month after the wedding, on a rainy evening, the doorbell rang. Surprised, I opened it and froze. My parents stood there, under the dim porch light. Mom, her silver hair wet and plastered to her forehead, looked at me with red, weary eyes, filled with an emotion I'd never seen in her. Regret. Dad stood beside her, shoulders slumped, his stern face aged a decade. "Alex," Mom said, her voice trembling, almost drowned out by the rain. Can we come in?" I nodded, speechless, my throat tight. I led them into the living room, where the warm yellow light illuminated the bare walls, highlighting the stillness. They sat on the sofa. Mom clutched Dad's hand, fingers intertwined as if drawing courage. I sat across from them, gripping the armrests, my heart pounding. For years, I'd imagined this moment. The day they'd face what they'd done. Now that it was happening, I didn't know how to feel. Mom took a deep breath, her eyes glistening. "We were wrong, Alex," she began, her voice breaking. "We were too harsh. Too cold. We pushed Clara away, and you, too. We thought we were protecting the family's honor, but we lost our family. I'm sorry." A tear rolled down her cheek, and she bowed her head, unable to meet my eyes. Dad, always the stoic, looked strangely small. He nodded, his voice, each word a struggle. "We read your letter about Clara's wedding. We wanted to come. To see her. To meet our grandson. But we didn't dare. We were afraid Clara wouldn't forgive us, that you wouldn't want to see us after what we did." He paused, gripping Mom's hand, and I saw his eyes redden. For the first time in my life, I saw my father cry. I sat silently, emotions crashing over me like a wave. Anger. Pain. But also a hint of relief. For years, I'd been furious at them for turning their backs on Clara, for leaving me to carry everything alone. But seeing them there, two aging, remorseful people, my anger melted, replaced by a deep sadness. "Clara forgave Mark," I said, my voice soft but firm. "And she'll forgive you. She's stronger than you think. And Leo, he needs his grandparents. He deserves to know a family's love." Mom burst into tears, rushing to me, hugging me tightly as if afraid I'd disappear. "My boy," she sobbed. "I hurt you. I never meant to." Dad stood slowly, placing a hand on my shoulder, an awkward but heavy gesture. "You're a good brother, Alex," he said, his voice trembling. "And a father to Leo. I'm proud of you." We stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, in the large but suddenly warm room. The rain still fell outside, but its pattering now sounded like a lullaby, gentle and comforting. For the first time in years, I felt my family wasn't just broken pieces. We could heal. Step by step. And though the road ahead was long, I knew we'd walk it together. After my parents left, I sat back on the sofa, the now cold coffee mug on the table. The house was quiet, filled only with the sound of rain and my heartbeat. I'd been angry at my parents for so long, convinced they'd never change. But seeing Mom cry, seeing Dad, the man as unyielding as stone, tremble as he apologized, I felt a part of me lighten. They weren't perfect, but they were my parents, and they were trying to make amends. I picked up my phone, my fingers hesitating. I wanted to call Clara. To tell her about Mom and Dad. But I was afraid. Afraid she wouldn't want to hear it, that the wounds were too deep. But then I thought of Leo, of his radiant smile, and I knew I had to try. I dialed her number. After 2 rings, Clara's voice came through, warm and familiar. "Alex. I was just about to call you. Leo was asking about Daddy this morning." I smiled, though my heart tightened at the word, Daddy. "How's the little guy?" I asked, trying to keep my tone cheerful. "And you? How's life in Seattle?" Clara laughed. A sound soft but full of life. "Leo's doing great, Alex. He loves running around the apartment, driving Mark crazy, wanting to play superhero. And me? I'm studying again. And Mark, he's good to me, Alex. I never thought I'd be this happy." The apartment overlooks the bay. Every morning, Leo stands by the window, pointing at the ships and asking a million questions. I feel like things are finally okay. Hearing Clara speak, I felt a wave of warmth tinged with a hint of loss. She was happy, and that's what I'd always wanted. But a part of me still missed the days when it was just me, Clara, and Leo in that cramped Hood River apartment, where we were each other's entire world. "I'm glad for you," I said, and I meant it. "Clara, I have something to tell you about Mom and Dad." Silence. I heard her take a breath, bracing herself. "What is it?" she asked, her voice quieter. "They came to my house tonight," I began, recounting everything. How they stood in the rain, how Mom cried, how Dad admitted their mistakes. I described the regret in their eyes, the apologies I never thought they'd utter. When I finished, Clara was silent for a long moment. I worried I'd upset her. Finally, she spoke, her voice trembling. "I don't know if I can forgive them right away, Alex, but I feel relieved. They're my parents, and I don't want Leo to grow up without knowing his grandparents." She paused, then continued, her voice brighter. "Alex, Thanksgiving is coming up. I want to invite you and Mom and Dad to Seattle. To our home with Mark. I want our family to be together, even if it's just for a day." I was stunned, not expecting her to open her heart so quickly. "Are you sure?" I asked. "They'd be thrilled, but you don't have to rush." "I'm sure," Clara replied, her voice firm. "Leo needs to know what family is. And I want you there. You're the most important person to me and my son." I smiled, tears silently rolling down my cheeks. "I'll be there, Clara. And I'll bring Mom and Dad." In the weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, I reconnected with my parents. I visited their house, the first time since they had kicked Clara out. The house was the same, with its white fence and trimmed garden, but this time it felt warmer. Mom made tea. Dad sat across from me, and we talked. Not just about Clara, but about the years gone by. About things we'd never said. "You did well, Alex," Dad said once, his eyes holding a pride I rarely saw. "You held this family together." When Thanksgiving arrived, I drove Mom and Dad to Seattle. They were quiet. Mom holding Dad's hand. Dad staring out the window as if preparing for something monumental. I was nervous, unsure how Clara would react, or how Leo would respond to his grandparents. Clara and Mark's apartment was on the top floor of a luxurious building, with large windows overlooking the shimmering Puget Sound. When we walked in, the smell of roasted turkey and pumpkin pie filled the air, mingling with Leo's laughter. He ran to me, shouting, "Daddy," before noticing my parents. Clara came out, wearing a simple green dress, but glowing. Mark, beside her, holding a bottle of wine, smiling awkwardly. "Hello, Mom." "Dad," Clara said, her voice soft but slightly trembling. She stepped forward, hugging Mom first, then Dad. Mom burst into tears, holding Clara tightly, whispering apologies. Dad stood still. But when Clara hugged him, I saw his shoulders tremble. "I'm sorry," Mom sobbed. "I was wrong to push you away." "It's over, Mom," Clara said, smiling through her tears. "We're here now. For Leo. For family." Leo, curious but shy, stood behind my leg, peering at his grandparents. Mom knelt down, opening her arms. "Hello, Leo," she said, her voice choked. "I'm your grandma." Leo hesitated, then ran to her, hugging her, and the room seemed to light up with his laughter. The Thanksgiving dinner was a picture of perfection. We sat around the table, turkey, mashed potatoes, pumpkin pie beautifully arranged. Mark talked about his work, trying to ease the tension, while Clara shared stories about school and her dream of becoming a nurse. My parents listened, nodding, and I saw them smile. Genuine smiles. Not forced. Leo sat between Clara and me, eating and chattering about a ship he saw in the bay, making the whole table laugh. As dinner ended, we gathered around the fireplace, its crackling flames warming the room. Clara took my hand, whispering, "Thank you, Alex. Without you, I don't know where I'd be." I squeezed her hand, saying nothing because words couldn't capture what I felt. My parents stayed an extra day, playing with Leo, talking with Clara. For the first time, I saw them as real grandparents. As they prepared to leave, Mom hugged me. "You gave us a second chance, Alex. We'll never forget that." Dad just nodded, but his pat on my shoulder said everything. Back in Hood River, I sat on the balcony of the new house, watching the Columbia River glimmer under the moonlight. Our story wasn't perfect, but it was ours. With its cracks, its tears, and its smiles. Clara and Leo were happy. My parents were back in our lives. And I, though still quiet, knew I'd done the most important thing a person could do. I kept our family together. Have you ever had to fight for your family against all odds? Or faced a betrayal that changed everything? I'd really love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below.